Hey, what's up? So this is chapter 3 of my novel about AI, The Mandate of Athena. It is entitled Code of Hope, A Journey Through Biotech Breakthroughs, Battling Cancer in Bits and Bytes, A Daughter's Determination, or Code, Cure, and Compassion, A Tech-Driven Tale of Tenacity. I don't know why ChatGPT loves the alliteration so much, but yeah. Anna blinked her eyes hard and stood up from the kitchen counter where she had been poring over her mother's cancer diagnosis for the 1000th time. She was nearly finished school, but still had trouble understanding all of the advanced medical terminology present in the various doctors' reports. But what she did understand from the results was not encouraging. Stage 4 breast cancer, very dangerous, probably only a few months to live. What a fucking disaster, she said to the empty kitchen and wiped away the day's 11th set of tears as she flipped the kettle on and took out 2 mugs from the wooden cupboard in the corner of the room. The chipped mugs clinked as she set them down, and she winced as she listened to hear if she had woken her mom. She heard nothing but the quiet whir of the fan in the next room over, and she relaxed. She stared into the glass kettle, and her thoughts bubbled up and exploded just like the turbulent water as it heated. Arguments, long intervals of boredom as they waited for test results, still trying to manage school amongst the chaos and the latest hospital visit. Hushed apologies from the oncologist, long-winded technical explanations, more apologies. The apologies were mostly for why there wasn't much the hospital could do for her mom after the 3rd round of chemo had failed to eradicate the large tumor in what remained of her left breast after a nightmarish mastectomy. She shuddered. The kettle whistled, and she didn't notice for a few seconds. Such was the shrill torpor of the thoughts inside her head. Sighing, she poured 2 cups of tea and removed the tea bag from the first. She carried it into the small, crowded study at the end of the hall and set it down next to her father, who was pored over reams of figures, trying to do the accounting work of a whole team for his failing company. "Thank you, sweetheart," he said, and took a sip before bending over the numbers again. She left him there, keenly aware of the last argument they had voiced in the hospital waiting room that afternoon as they disagreed over what next thing they could do to save her mom. It was better he focused on his work. There was every chance they would have to leave this already small apartment for another, even more cramped one when they exhausted what little savings she knew they had left. Their health insurance was not up to the task of advanced stage 4 cancer, and his failing accounting firm did not ameliorate the already tense mood in the house. She looked in on her mom on the way back to the kitchen and saw her sleeping peacefully in front of a fan. In the darkness, Anna could not see her bald head and pale skin that gave away her true condition, and she preferred it that way. It was not fun to watch her mother die. She collected her tea from the kitchen and flicked the light off. She closed her bedroom door and sat on her bed for a while, just staring at the wall, trying to empty her mind. At last, she set her tea down and pulled her laptop into her lap. She picked at the keys for a few minutes, making headway into an essay she was supposed to be writing about small businesses. She had interviewed her friend's Aunt Sarah, who ran a Chinese takeout restaurant a couple of blocks away, and it had been interesting to see how their business worked and how she had grown it from nothing. But Anna had trouble caring for things in the world of commerce over the world of biology lately. After several more uninspired sentences, she was on the verge of giving up when she saw a call coming in from Jess. She shut her laptop lid and leaned back onto her bed, closing her eyes and accepting the call. Hey you, how was today? You know, I don't know. Want to tell me about it? Anna sighed. She knew her friend just wanted to help, but she was so tired of keeping everyone up to date with her mom's condition. She just wanted things to be better and for her mom to not speak in whispers like she did now to save energy. It was fine. The oncologist said the tumor hasn't grown anymore. Well, that's good at least. Yeah. Doesn't help that it's already spread to so many other places, but yeah, small mercies. There was a pause. What did they say about more radiation? We were going to do another round or 2, but my mom's vomiting was so bad today after the last time it might just make her even weaker and more fucked up. Her voice broke a little on the last words. Oh, Anna, I'm so sorry. That's so horrible. Yeah, Anna said and reached for a tissue next to her bed. She kept a full box close at hand these days. Anyway, she continued when she had blown her nose. What's new with you? I didn't see you in English today. I'm good, thanks. The reason I wasn't in English was because I had to go catch up on that history test I missed because of the dentist last week. Oh, how'd it go? Okay, I think. Not sure. Anna rolled her eyes to herself. Jess was the smartest person she knew and was always cracking 90s for tests. She just lacked the ego to boast about it. I'm sure you smashed it, she said as she readjusted herself on the pillow and yawned. Thanks. But I can hear you're tired. I'll let you get to bed. I'm not too tired. I don't need to go yet, Anna lied. She was exhausted, but the thought of lying awake by herself again worrying was not appealing. I can tell you're lying, came the amused response in Anna's ear, but all right. They spoke for another 10 minutes, discussing idle school politics and what their various friends were up to. She heard about a breakup, an argument over vacation plans, and a stolen phone. The kind of things that would have been the center of her world just a few months ago, but now paled in significance. Jess paused as the conversation lulled and asked tentatively, I know you're probably tired of talking about it, but have you had a chance yet to look at some of those experimental treatments I was talking about? Anna stared for a long time at the ceiling before answering. No, I'm sorry, I haven't. She paused. I don't want to get my hopes up. She had, of course, launched into a million Google searches the minute she had learned about her mom's diagnosis. She had read every article about breast cancer she could and Googled miracle cures, alternative treatments, anything that could help her mom. But almost all of it was years old and disproven, and the one or two positive glimmers of hope she had spied in the form of animal studies or new drugs had been quickly dashed by the studies being trialed overseas or the drugs unproven. I know, Jess said softly, but there's some really positive articles I read about AI discovering drugs, and you know how I feel about that shit. Anna choked into the phone. I don't want to use anything AI created. Anna, I know what happened was shitty, but you've got to. I really, really don't want to talk about it. It didn't just happen to you. All of the girls were, yeah, but it wasn't as bad for them. Anna was breathing heavily. Jess sighed into the phone. Look, we don't have to talk about it. Good. But at least read the articles I sent you for your mom. Don't let your own fear stop you from helping her. Anna shrunk at her friend's sharp words. She felt cold thinking about what had happened, but knew deep down that her friend was just trying to help. She swallowed. Fine, I will. Good, her friend said. Anyways, I'm gonna go to bed now. I'm super tired. All right, I'll see you at school tomorrow? I guess. Bye. She ended the call abruptly. She rolled onto her side and curled into a ball. She knew she had been unnecessarily mean to Jess, who was just trying to help, but she hated thinking about what had happened earlier that year. It made her feel so shameful, even though she had done nothing wrong. Near the start of the year, a video of her having sex with 5 different guys simultaneously had appeared online and been circulated amongst her peers. She had no idea who the guys were supposed to be, but their faces were mostly obscured anyway. It had never happened. She had never even had sex, but the uproar it caused was insane. Her friends had been shocked and disgusted by the video, and everyone who was talking about a wild, crazy sex tape in which she was used again and again by different guys who all manhandled, slapped, and sexually used a completely lifelike depiction of her, who cried out in ecstasy the whole time in a perfect imitation of her own voice. The school had called her in and demanded answers. She was underage, so of course the police had been involved too. And no one except her close friends really believed her story about the video being fake until the same thing happened to another girl 3 days later, and then another and another. All perfect fake pornography videos with various girls from the school doing various sexually explicit acts that were undetectable as fake videos to the casual observer. If you looked closely enough, apparently you could see the telltale markings of an AI-generated video and face swap, but Anna couldn't really see it and was shaking to her core when she first watched the video and saw and heard herself performing. There had been an investigation, of course, and many people questioned and accused, both in the student body and staff, but no resolution had ever been reached and no one ever found guilty. They had organized a couple of group therapy sessions with the girls who had been targeted, and Anna had appreciated that she could share the emotional burden with others, but it had not taken away the shame and embarrassment that she had felt those first few days when only the video of her was circulating. And people still looked at her funny in the hallways, even though everyone knew the videos were fake. She had no idea why she and the other girls had been targeted. There was no pattern, no truly believable motive, and no likely perpetrator of the emotional violence. She felt violated and shamed through no fault of her own. And then it had started happening at other schools too, and it ceased to become news. 3 weeks after the last video had been posted and things were quietening down at her school, her mom had found the first lump in her breast, and Anna's fragile emotional state had shattered into jagged pieces that seemed to stab at her whenever she was alone and had time to think. The only reason she still felt okay was that she had mostly distracted herself with her mom's treatment and care and exhausted herself every day trying to take care of her while still doing well at school. That and the support of friends like Jess, who really didn't deserve to be snapped at over the phone. Anna sighed and sent her a voice note, apologizing and telling her she was just really stressed and loved her a lot and really appreciated her. She felt slightly better afterwards and went to brush her teeth. She flicked the light off a few minutes later and climbed into bed, covering herself only slightly in the evening heat. She closed her eyes and tried not to think about things. She did not succeed. She tossed over onto the other side and attempted to clear her mind, but she was not tired enough to fall into unconsciousness, and intrusive thoughts about her mom's death and losing the apartment and unwanted sexual images and even worries about school tests intruded on her thoughts until eventually she gave up and sat up in the darkness, exhausted but unable to sleep. She pulled her laptop towards her again and, lowering the screen brightness, scrolled through dog videos for a while. She had avoided social media almost entirely after the fake videos had come out, but she kept another account for just looking at memes anonymously. She used it on nights like tonight when she couldn't sleep. After a particularly cute video of a German Shepherd wiggling his ears made her smile, Jess's words imploring her to look at the article she had spoken of came unbidden to her. She knew, of course, it was because Jess's family owned 2 old German Shepherds that she had met before, but she still really didn't want to read anything about AI and the tools that had violated her and so many other girls' likenesses. But she was exhausted and bored of dog videos and couldn't sleep, and maybe it would help her mom. There had to be some positive use of such a powerful technology, right? She pulled up Jess's chat and opened the link she had sent her. Reading through the websites and studies, she began to get a picture of how narrowly focused her initial research had been. In those first few emotionally turbulent days after her mom's first diagnosis, Jess had scoured the internet for articles about breast cancer and breast cancer treatments, but had failed to learn about the general cancer treatment process and how new drugs were being hypothesized and tested for all different cancers, some of them targeted, others affecting large parts of the body. She read an article about 3D printed colon replacements being used to delay the ravages of colon cancer, a study claiming 35% reduction in tumor growth with a customized drug formulation system, and a new startup that was claiming it could alleviate a lot of various cancers' impact on the body by injecting a customized cell culture that surrounded the cancer and prevented it from interacting with the body too much. She was just beginning to get interested in this last article when her focus was interrupted by the sounds of her mom throwing up in the room next door. This was not a new occurrence, and so Anna finished the sentence she was reading before she got up and went to the kitchen to pour a glass of water. She took it into her mum's room and offered it to her in bed, where she had just sat down again. "Thanks," she said in such a small voice that it made Anna scared. She sounded like a child. She took a sip or two and then sat the glass down and sank back into her pillows, her eyes shutting. Anna kissed her on the sweaty forehead and went to the bathroom to see if it needed cleaning up. Thankfully it didn't. But Anna had gotten used to cleaning up bodily fluids in the recent months. She went back to her room and on the way saw that her dad was asleep on the couch again. He had taken to sleeping there since Anna's mum's frequent nighttime wake-ups. She turned the light off and he didn't stir. Back in her room, she squinted at her laptop again in the dark, filled with a slightly renewed sense of determination. Surely there was something that could help. On the website of the startup that was making customized cell cultures to prevent cancer cells from interacting with the body, she saw a case study about how it had helped a lady with stage 2 breast cancer from experiencing many of the unwanted effects of the disease that Anna was all too familiar with. A tiny flutter of hope moved within her. She saw the website had a contact page and she filled in her details. It couldn't hurt. A few minutes later, when she was beginning to feel truly tired and was about to turn off her laptop completely for the night, an email popped up from the startup with a subject line, "Interest in breast cancer treatment." She opened it and saw a short message from someone claiming to be Harriet, the CTO of a company, inviting her to chat about her cancer story. She clicked back to the website and confirmed that Harriet Schneider was indeed the CTO of Cancer Cell Culture Software Inc. Anna emailed her back and told her a few details about her mom's condition and that she was searching for any alternative treatments for her since all the traditional treatments hadn't worked. She wondered if this was a scam or if she was going to be sold some snake oil bullshit miracle cure that she had been cautioned against falling for as a family member of a cancer patient. Another email arrived less than 3 minutes later, inviting her and her mom to come visit the clinic that week to talk more about the cancer treatment and her potential involvement in a clinical trial. Anna's heart raced. She typed back a quick email saying she would have to talk to her parents and then sent it. An acknowledgement came back 1 minute later. Anna shut off her laptop and tried desperately not to feel excited, but hope was a tenacious thing and it flickered inside her as she fell asleep. The next morning, she set off a massive argument by telling her dad what she had done the previous evening. "You can't just go around believing in bullshit fake treatments, you know," he fumed. We've been over this before. If you let yourself believe every alternative treatment quackery, you'll be ingesting tree bark and doing cold plunges, all in the name of some miracle recovery. It doesn't hurt just to investigate, Dad, Anna said tiredly. Yes, it does, he said through gritted teeth, and he sat down at the kitchen table. It does hurt, because every time you let yourself get excited and hopeful again, it emotionally destroys you when it doesn't help. His voice cracked a bit at the end, and he stared blankly at the table in front of him. Dark rings encircled his eyes, and Anna knew they did hers, and she wished for the millionth time that they didn't have to deal with this. She sat down next to him and held his hand. They stayed like that for a long time, just sitting and feeling shitty. Eventually Anna stood up and went to make toast. When the toaster popped, she slathered peanut butter onto 2 pieces and handed one to her dad. Thanks. He took a bite and looked at her. About this cancer cell culture software? That's it. Tell me what they do. I want to believe more than anyone that there's a way to save your mum. I really do. So she told him what she had read online and the research she had done. They looked at the CCC software website together. She showed him the email exchange with Harriet. They even looked her up on LinkedIn and found her published medical research papers. Her dad eventually sighed and slumped back in his chair. It looks about as legitimate as things can be, which is not as comforting as it used to be, as you know from first-hand experience. She didn't flinch, but inwardly she shrunk. But go and see this Harriet lady and ask questions and see if it's worth pursuing further. I think we're approaching the desperate times call for desperate measures part of your mother's cancer. Just don't tell her. I don't want her to get devastated if it doesn't lead to anything. Aren't you going to come with me? She asked. I would, Anna, but I have to finish these stacks of journals here. He pointed at a huge pile of bound papers he was checking against digital records for an old client. And we both know we can't leave your mother alone for that long. I guess. I've just been doing so many things alone lately, she said quietly, and looked up at him, moisture gathering in her vision for the first time that day, and definitely not the last. I know, sweetheart, I know. You're doing so well, and your mum and I are so grateful for how strong and helpful you've been. Thanks, Dad. She hugged him and then sat down to finish the last of her toast while emailing Harriet to organize a time to go visit her lab. You want to go skip 5th and 6th period later and come with me to this cancer software company I'm going to see about my mom? Cancer software? New biotech startup building custom cancer drugs. From one of the links you sent me, lady who runs the company wants to meet in person to show me what they offer. Sounds interesting. Do we need to go during school though? Can't we go after? I need to get home by 5 to take care of my mom while my dad goes to some meetings, and the place is on the other side of the city. Only if we can stop for sushi on the way home. My treat. Can definitely do that, lol. See you outside history at 12? Thanks. Love you lots. XXX. Love you too. Anna knew Jess must really be worried about her if she was willing to miss class to come with her. She was a stickler for attendance, and so if she was giving up a history and calculus class to come across the city to visit some random medical lab, she must really think Anna needed the support. Truthfully, Anna couldn't bear the thought of doing anything else alone, but she didn't tell Jess this. No need for her to know just how badly she was doing mentally. Hey, thanks for coming, she said, as Jess approached the history classroom, tucking away an iPad into her bag and shifting it higher on her shoulder and underneath her long brown hair. Sure, no problem. I checked and we're just going over land conflict in the Middle East in history, and I've already done all the reading. And calculus I can probably catch up on my own. Are you sure? I don't expect you to. I'm sure. Don't worry about it. Thanks. I really, really appreciate it. You got it. Besides, this is just an extended sushi date when you think about it. Anna laughed and they weaved their way through a swarm of people intent on getting to class before the bell rang. They exited the school into bright sunlight and walked the 2 blocks down the street towards the train station. On the train, they talked about school and Jess's dogs, and Anna filled Jess in about the research she had done and how she had arranged her meeting with Harriet. Good on you for researching more and going to meet people, Jess said as she leaned against the window of the train as it bumped from side to side. They passed an errant patch of greenery surrounded by buildings. They were in the nicer part of the city now, the part with skyscrapers, people dressed in suits, and brightly lit storefronts. It can't hurt to know more about what treatments are out there, Anna nodded. They spent the next 10 minutes talking about Jess's German Shepherds and how they had taken to sneaking onto the couches during the night. Anna laughed and was cognizant of the fact that she had laughed and smiled very rarely in the past month. Then she felt guilty for feeling like a victim when she wasn't the one with cancer, and was just beginning to let her thoughts spiral negatively when they arrived at their stop. The CCC software office was in some of the nicest real estate in the entire city, surrounded by law firms and technology companies and the places where billionaires owned flats. The building they entered had a huge glass foyer with large shrubs and small trees in black pots, a large fountain in the center of the room, and an ornate glass chandelier dominating the ceiling. Jess was impressed. If anyone was solving cancer, it would be the people who could afford an office like this. She went over to a smartly dressed man sitting behind the reception desk and introduced herself and Jess, showing the man the appointment email she had received. They were given guest ID badges and ushered into a waiting room with a coffee bar and an honest-to-God bonsai tree stretching 5 meters into the open atrium. Anna met Jess's impressed gaze with one of her own, and they nodded silently to each other. Harriet Schneider entered a few minutes later with a confidence that Anna envied. She was casually dressed in black pants and a bright blue shirt that had a teddy bear printed on it. She had her hair tied back behind her head in a snood and large round eyes that echoed the friendliness in her voice when she greeted Anna and Jess. "Good morning, Anna," she said in a low but cheerful voice. "It is wonderful to meet you, though not under the best of personal circumstances, I gather." She extended her hand. Anna appreciated the forthrightness and shook. "Good morning, Miss Schneider. I'm Anna, and this is my friend Jess from school. It's very nice to meet you too. And yes, things are pretty shitty at the moment." A smile creased the older woman's lips. "Just Harriet will do, Anna. I'm not that old, you know." She then shook hands with Jess and led them past the coffee bar. "Did you girls get coffee yet?" "No, we just came straight from school." "I'm getting one. Do you want one as well?" "They're free." "Oh, well, in that case." Once they each had a coffee in hand and were standing waiting for the elevator, Harriet gave them a bit of backstory about CCC software and how she had pivoted her software development career into cancer drugs after her mother had died from throat cancer. A horrible death, as you might imagine, and it convinced me that no one else should have to experience the same nightmare as my family if there was a technology that could prevent it. "I'm so sorry, that's horrible, but very admirable," Jess said as they stepped into the elevator. "It was a good way to channel grief," Harriet said slowly as she punched the button for floor 23. "Anyway, I started playing around with using genetic algorithms and something called stochastic gradient descent to find new and novel drug compounds while I was working at a previous job. It didn't work extremely well at first, but as the years passed and I learned more and joined a larger team, it got better. We began to be able to take existing medications and produce potentially better drugs, ones that had fewer side effects or a faster acting effect." "Wow," said Jess, who was clearly impressed. "How did that work, that software or process to improve the old drugs?" Anna also wanted to know. "It was a combination of using large neural networks to predict protein structures from amino acid information and genetic algorithms to generate potential new compound combinations based on likely candidates." She looked expectantly at Anna and Jess. "I have to admit I don't really know what most of that meant," Anna said, smiling. "Me too, although I kind of understand the neural net parts," Jess agreed. "That's like a computer version of the brain, right?" "Exactly. Inspired by the brain, a collection of neurons that is trained to do a particular task. In this case, predict protein structures and compounds that interact with them." They reached the top floor, and Anna was actually slightly disappointed. After the opulence of the atrium and waiting room, the austere lab that greeted her was not as visually impressive. Lines of lab equipment all hummed quietly under the bright white lights, while a handful of people sat quietly behind giant computer screens. There was a meeting room tucked in the corner, and next to it a series of low fridges, all illuminated from within, and Anna could see the vials and vials of blood and syringes that arrayed the shelves. She supposed a place like this was more concerned about function than aesthetics, but it was still impressive in its own quiet way. Harriet introduced them to one or two people that came past to talk to her and say hi, but the majority of them sat behind their screens typing, clicking, sometimes interacting with something in VR, and what Anna could only imagine was conducting very important computational work, trying to solve diseases and invent miracle cures. Well, she could use a miracle cure around about now. They sat in the meeting room and sipped their coffees while Harriet finished telling them about the company and how they had landed a massive funding round after demonstrating they could kill the tuberculosis bacteria with up to 95% success rate with a custom-designed drug. "That's incredible," Jess uttered. "Like, world-changing amazing. Why haven't we heard about it in the news or online?" "It's still in the FDA approval process. It could take 2 to 8 years before the drug is legally approved for use." "That's forever," Anna remarked. "Oh yes. We've got thousands of cured people in clinical trials demonstrating its efficacy, but laws are laws, and we need to go through all the hoops that geriatric organization deems necessary." Harriet sounded genuinely upset, and Anna wondered at the complexity of the world of pharmaceuticals that was hidden from ordinary people like her. After scams like Theranos, authorities are extra resistant to approving revolutionary new treatments and drugs, as they should be, Harriet continued. But we're at the stage now where we've clearly got so much evidence that our treatments work and are effective that it's enormously frustrating to have people dying from a disease you cured 3 years ago on your laptop. That's crazy. Insane. Such is life. But enough about me and our problems. I want to hear about your mother, Anna, and to see what we can do for her. I'll tell you ahead of time now so that you don't get disappointed later, that we don't have any miracle cures to magically remove her cancer. Anna's heart fell. This is what she had feared. Why had she gotten her hopes up when... But, Harriet said, apparently reading Anna's disappointment on her face, we may be able to get your mother into one of our early clinical trials if she meets the right requirements. Oh, Anna's hope returned. That would be incredible, probably, I think. She paused and collected her thoughts. I think that might be the only thing that will save her now. Jess put her hand on Anna's and smiled at her. Anna smiled back and was touched when Harriet put her hand on top of Jess's and nodded. This is why I wanted to meet you in person, Anna. We spend a lot of time sitting behind our screens just staring at the result of a giant computing cluster, and it's important sometimes to remember what we are doing it all for. Anna nodded, slight tears in her eyes and suddenly aware of how silly she felt for crying in the presence of this amazing scientist in front of her. So she retold Harriet the story of her mother's cancer diagnosis and the mastectomy, myriad hospital visits, radiation sessions, side effects, and general deleterious effects of the tumors now spread around her mom's torso. Harriet nodded and made notes on a small iPad while listening intently. When Anna finished the sorry tale, she dried her eyes and looked expectantly at Harriet, who was still typing. She eventually finished and then set the iPad aside. First of all, I'm really sorry for everything you've been through. I know firsthand just how horrible being the one supporting someone dying can be. Anna nodded, not trusting her voice. And secondly, I know it sounds cruel, but your mother is so sick that she is a very bad candidate for our trials. The current group of cancer patients we have are all early stage still and have what I must admit is a much higher chance of survival for their disease, plus our interventions. Anna nodded again, the feelings of despair creeping over her. But there's definitely some ways we can help you, Anna. We can absolutely apply to have your mother in our next trial starting in 5 weeks' time. Frankly, she doesn't have anything to lose, and there is always a chance she might be approved to join. Diverse sample sets sometimes make strong conclusions in these types of studies. Additionally, we can take a sample of your mom's blood and run it through our model so that when the treatment is eventually approved for general use, your mom has a unique drug interaction profile ready to go so that she can be one of the first to get treated. That would be amazing, Anna said quietly. She was grateful for Jess's next question so she could surreptitiously wipe away her tears and sit a little straighter in her chair. How does that drug interaction profile work? You said something about it being unique. So the way this potential treatment works is we take a sample of someone's blood and sequence their genome. We've been doing this for decades now. But then we feed their genome into our large drug interaction model that predicts how your cells, instructed by your DNA and the structures of common cancers, bacteria, viruses, and other nasties, all interact with each other. This interaction is really important because it influences the kind of compound or custom drug that the model produces at the end. Whether it can either hide your body's cells from the radiation process or go about completely annihilating the damaged cells. The latter option is obviously first prize for cancer patients. Wow, that sounds incredible, Jess said. It is amazing to watch, Harriet agreed. I just wish we could jump forward 5 years and let everyone use it. It would save so many lives. I obviously would need to chat to my parents about this, Anna said, but I don't see why we wouldn't want to get involved. Remember, Harriet cautioned, we can't actually give you the drug yet. We can only generate the potential drug makeup specifically for your mother. Then it's up to regulatory approval. I understand. Still, anything that might help would be amazing, Dr. Schneider. Harriet nodded and they continued to discuss Anna's mom's condition and what potential alternative treatments there were. After another 20 minutes, Harriet excused herself for another meeting and bid Jess and Anna farewell at the elevator. Anna stared after the small woman who was not only a brilliant scientist and engineer, but also was one of the kindest and most sincere adults she had spoken to in a long time. What do you think? She asked Jess as the elevator whirred to life and accelerated smoothly downwards. I think I want to be like Harriet when I grow up, Jess answered, and they both looked at each other and laughed. I know, right? Me too. She's so smart and ambitious and kind. She looked ready to hug me when I told her about my mom's radiation struggles. Maternal instincts for sure, but also tough. You don't get investors to invest hundreds of millions of dollars into your speculative medical company without some serious business talent. They continued to dissect their meeting with Harriet Schneider as they walked down the street and found a small sushi bar Jess had looked up online, and were still discussing it an hour later after finishing a beautiful platter of California rolls, maki, and sashimi. Anna loosened the top buckle on her jeans and picked up a glass of water. Now, however, comes the question, what do I tell my parents? Everything that happened today, I think, Jess said. They should know all the facts and just how impressive that lady's company is. Yeah, I guess, but it sounds like only that clinical trial is going to get her the medicine any sooner than a few years' time, and she doesn't have a few years. They lapsed into silence. Do you think she'll get into it? I have no idea. Doesn't sound very likely. Yeah. They paid for their sushi, an exorbitant amount, but it was the center of the city and it was delicious, and they headed back to the train station. They continued animatedly talking about CCC software the entire ride home, and Anna could tell Jess was awed by everything about Harriet Snyder. Such was the reverence that she talked about her work and demeanor and lab. Anna was impressed too. She was a great female role model, but she couldn't stop her thoughts from turning unbidden to the low likelihood of Harriet Schneider being able to actually do anything useful for her mom. After Anna hugged Jess goodbye and thanked her for everything, she trudged home from the train station and into their small apartment. She found her mum awake and sitting at the kitchen table, sipping a cup of soup, and Anna smiled to see her out of bed for a change. They chatted for a while, and then Anna quickly told her and her dad, who hadn't yet left for his meeting, everything about her and Jess's visit to CCC software and the potential wonders within that glass lab on the 23rd floor. 3 days later, after her parents had ultimately agreed that it couldn't hurt to at least do the blood test, a small package arrived at their doorstep from CCC software, and Anna carefully opened it to find a small sealed biohazard bag with what looked like an EpiPen inside, a small instruction guide, and a handwritten letter. Hi, Anna. Have hope. Harriet. Anna smiled and started reading the instructions. Later that night, she did as directed and held the small metal tube firmly against her mom's arm and pressed a button on the side of the tube down firmly. Her mom made a noise through her teeth as she was obviously pricked, and a small rivulet of blood flowed inside the tube's visible line marker on the side, pulled in by a pre-prepared vacuum. It was finished just as quickly as it started, and Anna removed the tube and placed the lid over the bottom and placed it in the bag as directed. She placed a plaster on her mom's arm. It wasn't really necessary as the cut was so small, but she applied it gently anyway. They sent the package back to CCC software, and then they waited. Anna went to school each day and rushed home immediately afterwards to see her mom. She did not improve, only worsened. Her dad worked and seemed to retreat deeper within himself, only coming out from his study at meal times. Anna fretted. A week later, Anna received an email with a link and an attachment. She clicked on the attachment first, and her computer couldn't even open it, some strange proprietary file. She then opened the link and was directed to what looked like an internal CCC software page, explaining that the file she had received was a custom-made cancer tumor destruction compound that was uniquely tailored for her mom's body and cancer cells. It was not guaranteed to work. It was just the result of a simulation after all, but it had an over 70% predicted efficacy. It could be manufactured by CCC software at a reasonable price at such a time that the treatment became fully regulated and standardized. Anna hurried to go show her parents the cure she held in her hands but could not use yet. Anticipation built in the apartment as the date of the announcement of CCC Software's next clinical trials participants drew nearer. Her dad was on edge, and Anna's mom had taken to refreshing her emails obsessively. Anna tried to distract herself with schoolwork but did not meet with much success. Then Anna's mom got a cold. She had been mildly sick on and off ever since she had started chemotherapy, what with having a completely wrecked immune system and all, but she had thrown off all of the sicknesses so far. This time she struggled more. She coughed and blew her nose and developed a fever. Then she vomited for 2 days straight, and then Anna took her to the hospital because she was so dehydrated. Then she was put on a drip and her fever worsened over the next 4 days. And then she died. Anna didn't cry as much as she thought she would. She was miserable and her entire world had fallen apart around her, but it all felt kind of detached and surreal for the first 2 or 3 days after. Jess came to see her at home, and some other friends from school and some extended family even made the long trip to offer useless words of sympathy. A day after the funeral, which was the single shittiest experience Anna had ever had to endure in her entire life, the CCC software trial allocations came out. She received a letter, an honest-to-goodness physical letter, informing her that her mother had not been selected for the trial due to poor health and treatment viability rating. There was a handwritten note enclosed too that read in neat script, "I'm so sorry, Anna. You and your family are who CCC software was created to help. Your story is unfortunately not unique and is why I and many others wake up and work as tenaciously as we do. Come and talk to me when you are ready. My mother died too, remember. Thoughts and prayers, Harriet. Anna hugged the note close to her and finally broke. 3 years later, when the emotional trauma of those terrible months had begun to fade and the merciless march of the hedonic treadmill had Anna upset about her mark in her data and algorithms final in college as opposed to the death of her mother, the CCC software, custom drug interaction modeling software and treatment was federally approved and officially regulated. Anna heard about it from Jess, who interned at CCC software during the summer and winter breaks and whenever she had a spare second from her microbiology degree, really. The treatment was approved and rolled out to thousands of people across the country and even the world, and the company's share price climbed with a pace that made old Nvidia rallies look cute. She saw news stories about people with leukemia being able to run marathons as their body's cells hid from cancer cells, chemotherapy only targeting cancer cells and so removing any negative side effects of the treatment, and women with breast cancer similar to her mom's being cleared of all cancer presence after just a few weeks of using the customized drug treatment and having 3D printed replacement tissue inserted to mask the horrors of mastectomies like her mom's. And I saw all the news stories and all the joy and all the hope that Harriet Schneider, now a household name, was bringing to the world, and she was genuinely happy for the families that would never have to experience what she and the people that would go on living, unlike her beautiful mom. Her AI therapist that she talked to almost daily since her mom died explained to her that feelings of anger and even loathing at people who had things that you could not have in the past were normal, but unproductive. She understood this, of course, and tried to ignore it, but it still was difficult, and she still cried occasionally. She still had the file in her email inbox that contained the computer instructions and chemical compounds that, if created as they easily could have been, would have saved her mother without fuss. She just wished things had happened sooner. Sure, and that is chapter 3 of The Mandate of Athena. Bit of a more somber, sad story, and, I don't have personal experience with people getting very sick and dying of cancer and that. But I think it's a cautionary tale because at one point there, in any product and technological development, there were people dying that treatment could save. I mean, even today, like just basic hygiene and things like flu vaccines and that, and basic preventative healthcare could save a lot of people's lives, but people still die in South Africa every day from TB and malaria and diarrhea, just dehydration, lots of people. And so I think it's a cautionary tale as well, just to remember that although it's important to have regulations and safety and that in future for powerful drugs and powerful technologies, every day you do delay, you do kill people. And as we become smarter and smarter with artificial intelligence and more important technologies, it's going to be interesting to see how the regulation versus just getting it out into the world to help people as quick as possible goes. Nick Bostrom actually has a great story actually called The Dragon Tyrant about curing aging and how the old people that died the day before the cure for aging was announced and released, they're still dead after that cure comes out, and there's nothing you can do to save them. And that's really sad and, a cautionary tale in over-regulation and over-legislation. But yeah, that is my third chapter of my AI novel, The Mandate of Athena. I am going to read chapter 4 and 5 this coming week. Looking forward to reading it and getting the story out there into the world. Once again, you can read all of them on the website or on Twitter. Thanks for listening, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.